Hi, my name's Brad Young, and welcome to the Peak Performance Podcast. Today, we're going to look at overcoming obstacles with fitness and focus. We're going to look at lessons from elite military units. And so, in the Peak Performance Podcast, what I do is I take theory and I practically apply it. And so, every episode of the Peak Performance Podcast has a link in the podcast description where you can download the information from the podcast. Most of the time, you're going to have a workbook and then you can write in whatever, you write in, what you need, how you can, practically apply the lessons, because that's the intention, every single episode has got practical application in it. And so today we're going to be looking at, lessons from elite military units, how, fitness and focus and obstacles. And so what do you think about when you think about elite military unit? You think about resilience, discipline, mental toughness. You think about tough fitness regimens, mental strategies for war and combat. You think about an unwavering focus to overcome, the world's toughest obstacles. I mean, these are elite units that are, less than 1% of the population. So we start looking at these units. First of all, we got to look at what challenges people face in daily life and how we can utilize these challenges using the principles of elite military units. So challenges people face, they face maintaining physical health and fitness. We've got over 40% of Americans are obese now. So we're having a real health crisis here. And that obesity leads to increased rates in, so many diseases. I've written about it in so many books. I mean, it's getting really bad. We've got to really do something about it. So when you think about an elite military unit, their physical health and fitness is top notch. And so everyday people, they face this challenge. It's just what they do about it. Maintaining your personal and your work responsibilities despite all the stress and anxiety. And so, it's something that, people face because they got to be able to maintain their work and personal responsibilities despite all the stress and anxiety. And the stress and anxiety leads to the physical health issues. Balancing family relationships and social obligations, overcoming financial pressures and budgeting effectively. Too many people don't budget effectively. I believe it's over 60% of the population can't cover a $500 emergency. And it's been this way for decades. This is not anything new. This isn't something that just popped up on the news or something. This is, real data that's, been going on for decades. People find challenges of staying motivated in the face of setbacks or failures. People quit too easy. They're not able to cultivate enough mental resilience and maintain a positive mindset. They can't handle unexpected crises, adapt to change. And they don't find enough time for self-care and personal growth. And so these are challenges people face, and these are all challenges. These are all real challenges, being able to cultivate that mental resilience and a positive mindset. With everything that's so negative out, people have trouble. Every time you turn on the TV, open up social media, whatever, everything's negative. No matter what it is, everything's negative. Everything's falling apart, all these things. And so people have, they let these things affect their mindset. Instead of tuning it out and focusing on self-development, they let everything else in the world get into their head, and it causes all these problems. And so these are real challenges. And so how are we going to solve them? Well, we're going to look at the ways that elite military units operate that can provide effective strategies to work, to combat some of these things. So as we go through, we're going to go through a whole bunch of different concepts and lessons that you can practically apply. But elite military units develop discipline and consistency in their daily routines. And so that's something you can definitely utilize. They learn to prioritize and focus on what truly matters. See, there you go. There's another one. They find the one thing to where people are all over the place and they do not prioritize in the right manner. And that's why they end up with no time, et cetera, et cetera. They build mental toughness and they have the ability to push through challenges through their training. They adopt structured planning and goal setting techniques. They understand the value of teamwork and collaboration under pressure. Too many people don't want to work in teams. They want to blame each other and point fingers at everybody instead of working as a team and collaborating. Improve decision making in high stress situations. They're put in a situation to where they have to make decisions. A lot of people never get put in those situations where they have to make a decision until it's too late or the decision's too big, instead of making those small decisions going forward. Make those small decisions every day, and then the big ones, work their way out. They gain confidence through preparation and practice. People don't prepare and practice nearly enough. And so when you look at elite military unit, that's what they do constantly. They're always preparing and practicing. They're drilling, getting ready to be prepared for any situation that they mentally visualize and go through their preparation and practice. They learn to adapt and remain flexible in rapidly changing circumstances, because things can go in so many different directions. They cultivate a mindset of perseverance and determination, and they enhance their problem solving skills by thinking strategically and creatively. And so they're challenged mentally and physically. And so we look at, that's why the elite military units are an inspiration, that can provide effective strategies for the average person. So how we're going to apply these things, we're going to get into that. So we look at the mindset of elite units. We're going to look at resilience and mental toughness. This starts with discipline and consistency. Building mental toughness requires a disciplined approach to training and a constant commitment to self-improvement. People don't do this, but you can do this. We've got to figure out a way how. So we're going to, as we practically apply this, we need to be able to develop discipline and consistency, and it starts with that approach. It starts with your approach to your daily schedule. Stress management, they learn to perform under the most challenging situations. Self-awareness, they're aware of their own strengths and weaknesses and their triggers. So this is something that, when you start looking to develop resilience and being adaptable to adversity, you got to be self-aware. You got to understand what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what triggers you. And so I have to do this on a regular basis. I have to really take a look at my strengths, weaknesses, and things that trigger me, and I have to figure out how to improve them. Elite military units have a positive mindset. They maintain optimism no matter what the situation is. They figure out a way to push through. It's a culture. They figure out a way to push through and achieve their goal. And they have team cohesion. They rely on camaraderie and mutual support. And that fosters, the right environment to be able to make it through any situation. So key principles of staying calm under pressure, breathing focus. These units, they practice this. They practice breathing and focusing. They break everything down, divide overwhelming challenges into smaller, manageable tasks. This makes things less intimidating and more achievable. They visualize success. They envision a positive outcome, which aids in building confidence and maintaining your focus. If you'll visualize your next steps, you'll make it happen because you can see it. People lack the vision. We have to look and be able to visualize where we're headed to. Step back and do that. This is the practical application. Once you've broke everything down into the manageable task, then you got to visualize that success. Control the controllable. This is what, people don't understand. You have to let go of things you can't influence the outcome of. You can only control certain things. Too many people want to control people versus themselves, and that's going in the wrong direction. But you can only control what you can control, and you got to understand that. And sometimes we all have to step back and say, I can't control this. What can I control in this situation? And stay present. Elite units stay present because their life depends on it. And when you stay present, you prevent overthinking, and it allows you to make effective decision making in that moment. It's kind of like when I was in transportation for all these years. You have to stay present. You have to make effective decisions right then. There's no time to think about it. There's no time to go through all the things. You have to make a decision and be accountable for it. And that's what they have to do in the elite military units. So, when we look at the importance of goal setting and visualization. So these are things that, you can definitely utilize. The elite units have clarity in mission objectives. Goal setting measures the individual and team objectives. Make sure they're clearly defined, allowing for precise planning and execution. If you did that in your life, things would be a lot different. If you have a mission and you have to make it, you have to break it down. You have to clearly define it. You plan precisely and you execute it. This is what Special Forces does. These elite units do. They enhance focus and discipline. With visualization, you can maintain unwavering focus and discipline because you can see the end of the road. You can see your next objective. You can see you going through and completing it. You can see all these things. Effective contingency planning. And this is where, when you set goals, you have to anticipate that there's going to be other obstacles that get in the way. And you have to create, robust contingency plans. And so in life, we got to do that as well. People forget that. They don't effectively have contingency plans. You've got to be able to be adaptable. And that's what this is all about. We look at goal setting and visualization, you have to be adaptable. You've got to be able to anticipate that things are not going to go right every day and what you're going to do about it. Team cohesion and synchronization, having shared goals and visualization works with any team. Obviously the special operations, the elite military units, they use this because lives are on the line, but you can do this with your company, with your family, or whatever. You got to have team cohesion and be synchronized. Too many people are way off track. They don't have shared goals and vision. And so everybody's doing their own thing. But if you're a part of a team, you need to have shared goals and a vision, be able to execute it. So implementing these principles into everyday life, you start with clear visualization. You take a few moments and you visualize what you're going to do, your desired outcome. You got to step back and you got to think about completing that project or getting that goal, visualize it. You got to set specific measurable goals. You got to break down your ambitions and your goals into achievable tasks. Break them down. Have specific measurable goals that you can achieve. Build confidence through preparation. Practice and prepare for the challenges, because if you don't practice, you will never be ready. You'll never operate at a high level if you're not practicing. Create contingency plans. People need to do this. You got to take other approaches. You got to think outside of the box. No matter what it is, whether it's got to do with the gym preparation at home, it's got to do with your career, your education, whatever it is, you got to have contingency plans. And foster teamwork and communication. This is where people lose everything because of their lack of communication and teamwork within their groups. Whatever group you're involved in, up the communication and work as a team. So now we're going to look at fitness as a foundation for problem solving. Physical fitness is going to contribute to your mental clarity and your emotional resilience. And these are two things that you got to have, because if you're mentally not thinking right, you make terrible decisions. And if your emotional resilience is not high, everything is going to set you off, and your emotions can wreak havoc on every aspect of your life. And so we start off with a regular exercise routine. Sounds like common sense, but common sense isn't common. Have a regular exercise routine. Think about stress reduction through movement. Physical exercise helps to release endorphins, which reduces stress and promotes a more positive mindset. Improve sleeping patterns. This is where I have a lot of trouble because I have mild sleep apnea, and it's tough to sleep sometimes. It's really tough, but you got to allow your mind to recharge and rest. It helps improve your problem solving skills, because I promise you, I notice some dramatic difference when I'm not sleeping well. And you do too. People are so sleep deprived, sometimes they don't even realize what day it is, and all these other things that they should know. But if you're getting your sleep patterns down, you'll feel a lot better. It'll help you with problem solving in so many ways, because you got to get sleep. You got to rest. People say, "Oh, I can make it on 4 hours." No, you can't. Not and be effective. But fitness gives you boosted energy levels. You're able to maintain increased energy. And they give you discipline and routine building because the commitment to regular fitness, exercise, it requires discipline, which enhance your ability to tackle problems systematically because, if you're committed to, this many, X amount of workouts, X amount of whatever, you're building discipline in your routine. Simple strategies for beginners that is inspired by the elite units. When you look at fitness, you're a beginner. You got to think about it. They do so many body weight exercises. So when you look at elite units, they do a lot of body weight exercises. It's something you can do with no equipment. You can do it at home or wherever. You can do it in your office, in your bedroom, anywhere. If you start with body weight exercises, this will be something, you can simply execute. You can create a consistent schedule. This is going to be throughout the entire podcast. We're going to talk about this because that schedule is a big thing. You got to set specific days and times to establish that routine. You can be flexible, but you still need to, set up specific days and times. Focus on your proper form. And that helps prevent injuries and, helps engage all your muscles. It's just kind of like the CrossFit pull-ups just kill me because they're just slinging. I don't know. But, that's not proper form. It may be for them, but it's not proper form, for anybody else. But, you gradually increase your intensity and you combine cardio and strength. So these simple fitness things can help, and they're inspired by what the elite units do. But now let's look at the benefits of being consistent and disciplined. Because, your physical effort can help you overcome any obstacle. When you think about this, consistency and discipline can help you because if you're consistent in your discipline, you build resilience. Your mental clarity gets enhanced through the endorphins. You reduce stress. You have discipline. It's going to boost your confidence because when you achieve goals and milestones, you have confidence you can go back and do it again. Some things that today may seem like a overwhelming challenge, maybe nothing for you in a few months. Improve energy levels. I'm sorry, I was reading off the wrong line. Improve your energy levels. Discipline fitness regimen, helps you improve your energy levels. And so, when we think about this consistency and discipline, they're going to help you overcome obstacles because that's easy. Build resilience, enhances your mental clarity, fosters discipline, boosts your confidence, and improves your energy levels. And so the average person can utilize these same things, because it teaches you time management. It teaches you goal setting. It teaches you stress management. It teaches you consistency and resilience. You can do these things very easily. Building focus and discipline. When we start thinking about that, when you want to build it, start with visualization techniques. Practice mental imagery to see you attempting and achieving a task. Mindfulness training, incorporate mindfulness like meditation will help clarify your mind. It'll help you focus on the moment. Control breathing, breathing techniques can really, truly help reduce stress and enhance your concentration if you utilize them right. Task prioritization, breaking down tasks into smaller ones, is like the one thing. So when you're building focus and discipline, task prioritization should be at the top. You focus on the one thing, get it accomplished, you go to the next thing. You got to eliminate distractions. Just like me, I have ADHD, and so I have to work on it. Distractions become my nightmare. In Chaos to Clarity, I talk about that. It's tough. But now here's ways the average person can do this. You can practice deep breathing. If you set aside 5 minutes a day, it can make all the difference in the world. You can use a planner, a task list. I use all these things, alarms, things like that, to be able to help because these are going to help you focus and become more disciplined. identify your key priorities. And that's the thing about people don't even know what their key priorities. They're so unself-aware. They don't even know what their key priorities are for the day. I've seen too many companies start off and they don't know what their real key priorities are for that day. And so they can't even focus on what they really need to be focusing on. Turn off digital distractions. I do this. I don't have any notifications. So I don't answer the phone a lot of times. I don't answer anything because I turn off those distractions. I look at it a certain amount of time. I look at the phone or any kind of, computers or whatever, but after that, turn them off. Declutter your workspace. This is something that we all need to do, whether it's your house or your workspace or both. Declutter, that will help your clarity and your concentration so much. And I have to continually work on this on a daily basis. Time management and maintaining discipline under pressure. I mean, when we start thinking about this, elite units do this at a very high level because they prioritize and they execute things. They adapt to the changing circumstance. That means they're flexible, they're adaptable. They practice tactical patience. They stay calm under pressure because they know that they have to analyze every situation thoroughly. And you have to do that, you have to do that. You have to be patient. You have to step back and think about things because, their next step could be someone's life, whereas yours may not be as high level, but it's still, you need to practice tactical pressure. They break tasks into manageable steps. These should be common sense, but common sense isn't common. You got to break everything down, and they can commit to continuous improvement. When you think about a elite unit, they're always improving and getting better. That's why they practice and do all these things. And so now when we start looking at daily habits and rituals that can drive success. And so, if you have a structured morning routine, special ops, they all have structured morning routines. They have physical training and condition. They have mental resilience practices. They do skill drills and training. They plan and prioritize. They pay attention to nutrition. And then they do have regular reflection and they review. And as a person, here's how you can do those things. Set personal goals. Identify clear objectives that are achievable. Establish a routine. And stick to it. Practice basic skills. Skills that you may or may not think you need. Practice them. Practice things that you're going to use on a regular basis because practice doesn't make perfect, but practice can sure make you great, can make you better. Plan your day. Too many people don't have a schedule. They don't plan anything. You can adopt a healthy diet. Special operations, they definitely plan their day and they adopt a healthy diet because they know how important it is to be hydrated and have your nutrition. Reflect on your progress and stay consistent. These are all things that you can do to easily implement the practices of these elite units into your life. And so the last thing we're going to look at is going to be teamwork and accountability. These elite units, they communicate effectively. They have everything broke down into simple measures. And that's why I always say everything is simple. And I always try to speak, as clearly as possible when I communicate. Don't leave anything out, but don't add too much extra, just be effective, be clear. They establish trust. They prioritize collaboration. They set shared goals and they support each other. And so how we can do that, with our groups, we can establish clear expectations, schedule regular check-ins. People don't do that enough. They don't check in enough with each other. Too many teams are not real teams. They don't work together. They don't celebrate milestones. They don't use accountability tools. They don't have, they don't utilize apps, calendars, and trackers and things like that as a team. And they don't encourage honest communication. People are so fake. They act like everything's great, but it's really not. And so as we finish up, an action plan for listeners, people who listen to this podcast. Number one, you set clear, specific, and measurable fitness goals for daily improvement. which these could be, fitness goals, but then also your daily goals. Incorporate a consistent exercise routine that suits your current fitness level. People don't do that enough. They just like all your New Year's Eve people. I'm sorry, your New Year's Day people at the gym. They're starting January 1st, but they're not consistent and they don't understand their own baseline fitness level. And I've covered that in other podcasts. Practice mindfulness or meditation to enhance your mental clarity. Create a balanced diet plan to fuel your body and mind effectively. And here's something that I only realized recently. If I don't balance my diet out like I should, I end up at too much of a caloric deficit with not enough sugar. And it does not help my mind. It makes it worse. And so when you train too hard or you just don't eat enough, it affects you. And then you're not as sharp as you need to be. So you got to be able to fuel your body and your mind. And I just, there's been times that I haven't done it and I'll catch myself and I'm like, okay, I need to eat more. I've got to put more calories because, I'm expending a lot of calories. And that's where, you can utilize this information from what elite units do. But you create a balanced diet plan. You gradually increase the intensity of your workouts. You track your progress regularly, and you establish a community. And this is just with your fitness. With your personal goals, you can do the same thing. But this has been a long podcast, but I wanted to make sure to get enough information, to where you're able to utilize the mentality and the strategies of these elite units to help yourself in your personal life, because people don't look outside enough to others to be able to help themselves. And so that's what I'm here for. I want to help you achieve peak performance, and I can provide the theory, but also provide the practical application. So remember, there's a link in the podcast description regarding the episode. I'm going to give you a workbook where you can write things down and understand everything better, understand yourself better, and how to practically apply the principles we talked about today. But anyway, my name's Brad Young. Thank you, and have a great day.